Good morning. My name's Beth Vogel-Ferguson. I'm from the College of Social Work at the University of Utah. Today I'm going to be sharing some thoughts on surviving and thriving in 2020. Anyone else tired of 2020? If there was ever a need for a time machine to travel forward, it's definitely now. My goodness, and what if you woke up after 6 months in a coma? I wouldn't want to be this woman's husband having to explain what's going on. And definitely, if 2020 was a drink, what would it be? A colonoscopy prep. I don't know what's coming next. Meteorites, aliens, who knows what's on the horizon. Humor is one of my favorite coping strategies, but it's valuable for us to realize that when we're using a coping strategy, it's because there's something challenging there for us to cope with. And 2020 has definitely brought us that. As we think about the year 2020 and the impact that it's had, I think it's helpful to start with how it's impacted us personally. It gives us perspective, another lens. So if you're doing your email or texting a friend, let me ask you to just stop for a minute. Take a moment to think about, what has this year been like for you? Maybe write down 3 stressful events that you've had to manage in this year. Just take a moment to do that. As you think about these things, notice what comes up for you. What emotions are there? How has it felt in your body? Is your heart beating faster? Maybe your stomach gets a little upset or nervous. Maybe you breathe more rapidly. Sometimes it's hard to identify exactly how it feels in our body. But all of these responses you might be experiencing can be referred to as a stress response. And if our 2020 stress response was a muscle, by the end of the year, we'll all be looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger. In light of these challenges, sometimes we can wonder, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get it together and deal with it all? It all has to do with this stress response. It's important to know that a stress response is a normal response to abnormal events. It's to be expected. It is what we would feel, for example, if we ran into this guy. What we are experiencing is a response which is key to our continued existence as a human race. It's our survival instinct. This response is something we all have, no matter who we are. Our family background, our intelligence, our education, it's a part of being a human person in this universe. And this response is rooted in our human brain, complex and amazing. We are literally hardwired for survival. So let's do a quick course in Brain Stuff 101. There are basically 3 parts of the brain. The reptilian brain regulates heartbeat, breathing, body temperature. Our limbic system is the center of that emotion, memory, and learning. And the neocortex fuels our thinking, problem solving, planning. In stressful situations, like a healthcare or fear of losing a job, these events are experienced in the limbic system and can be triggered by a flood of stress hormones that produce predictable changes in the brain. This is our survival instinct, often referred to as fight, flight, or freeze. The fight, flight, or freeze response occurs when we have an experience in which we feel threatened. When that happens, alarm bells go off in the limbic system and set off the fight, flight, or freeze response. When this happens, access to the neocortex, that thinking part of our brain, is cut off, and the survival instinct takes over. Adrenaline and cortisol flood the body to fuel the muscles so that we can react with strength and energy. We've all heard those stories of people displaying super strength to save a loved one. This works well if we're running from danger or chasing a child out into the street. It doesn't work so well if we're trying to navigate a pandemic. So, along comes 2020. I don't know about you, but for me, the year started off pretty good. And then the coronavirus hit. It was a rough few weeks. Kids home from school, businesses forced to close, the stock market going down. Yeah, it was rough, but there was hope that by summer everything would be okay again. Then came the earthquake, the civil unrest, the protests, and then just when we were trying to open up, the virus spiked again. As opposed to sudden threats, we are now faced with more chronic, unpredictable stresses and uncertainty. Health scares, political unrest, family issues, and the fear of what's next. It can be overwhelming and exhausting. Our stress responses have been activated over and over. So how can this repeated stress impact us? Nearly every part of our life can be impacted by stress, from thinking to work to social functioning. Each person experiences these stressors in their own way. It can be different depending on how close to home each event hits a person. Did I hear about thousands of people dying, or did my grandmother die? Did my neighbor's business close, or did mine? Was I already experiencing a lot of stressors in my life? I have heard many professionals talk about struggles with focusing and being productive at work while managing all the new demands of this time. Statistics are showing dramatic increases in domestic violence, substance abuse, suicide, and child abuse. And this makes sense. All of us, to differing degrees, have these alarm bells going off regularly. Or if not actually being triggered, we're living with the fear that they might go off at any moment. So it's natural that we might sometimes struggle to access that productive, creative, thinking brain, and we hunker down in survival mode. So, why should we care about all of this? Why would we want to know more? I believe human resources are the company or business's greatest asset. I certainly couldn't have done the work I've done without the 100+ research assistants I've employed over the past 20 years. Turnover and retraining is time-consuming and expensive, and engendering loyalty and commitment to our work goes two ways. This period of wild uncertainty will end. What can we learn now to set up for an even stronger future? One key is to be able to reframe how we interpret what is happening around us. If we see employees or ourselves struggling with work issues or time management or focus, behaviors different than I know of that person, it's easy just to think, what's wrong with you? Why aren't they or I working up to our full potential? This is where we need to reframe and stop and think. What's up? What's happening? Wondering, what might this person be experiencing? Maybe they have young kids at school, but every day they hear rumors that the schools are going to lock down again. What will I do with my 6-year-old? Another has a grandparent in a nursing home, so many of the deaths are in this population. Another spouse lost a job, and now the whole family's survival rests on my shoulders. The future is so uncertain. There is talk of the new normal, but what will that really look like? Returning to the office will likely mean something different for each person. Maybe it brings out anxiety because I have health issues or kids at home. Maybe it's a relief as my home space doesn't really provide a good work environment. It's a tough balance. Running a business and being aware of and attentive to the stresses faced by our employees and ourselves, but there will be an other side of the crisis. How can I, as an employer, supervisor, manager, make space for the very real challenges we are all facing? Well, we can first recognize survival mode responses in ourselves and others. And where we can, provide transparency, certainty, and flexibility in navigating this new normal. And finally, be patient with yourselves and with others. We can make it through this together. Thank you, and good luck.